Welcome to the Perry Health Pulse podcast, a program dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of healthcare, sharing firsthand knowledge from healthcare professionals, and putting you in the driver's seat on your journey to lifelong health and wellness. Listen and learn about how healthcare delivery is changing on our weekly podcast.
Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Perry Health Pulse. We are gearing up for holiday season. We got Thanksgiving coming up, Christmas, New Year's, and these are all times when eating is a huge part of what's going on. It's part of what makes it all exciting. But for people with diabetes, it can be a little bit tricky of a time period and tricky to stay healthy through all that. So for this episode, we're bringing in one of our nurse practitioners, Bianca Ramira. She actually holds a doctorate in the practice of nursing. And through doctorate programs, there's a lot of research that's done. And her focus was on diabetes. And then here at Perry, she's doing a lot of work with patients who have diabetes. So she'll be able to just lend a lot of insight to this topic. Thanks for joining us, Bianca.
Thank you, Dane.
Around these holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas are really the biggest ones. People tend to gorge themselves at mealtime. How does eating a lot all at once really affect people who have diabetes?
So people who have diabetes, they don't utilize the hormones which regulate the blood sugar well. So what it'll do is if someone eats a big meal and their body is not utilizing the sugar that's being produced by the body, it raises the blood sugar level in their body, and which can cause fatigue and other symptoms that make them feel tired afterwards. So it raises the blood sugar, and they have diabetes, so they don't utilize it well.
And from what I've heard, when you have high blood sugar, it's a little bit harder to tell that it's high than when it's really low, right?
That's right, because your body doesn't have You won't have the symptoms until it's really out of control. So that's right.
Okay. Now for people who, let's say even people making the meal or just some people in general, they kind of wait to eat because they know a big meal is coming. Mm-hmm. And so for people who have diabetes, going that long period without food and then a period of having lots and lots of food, how does that affect the body?
So it's going to be a problem if they don't eat for a couple of hours because their blood sugar might go lower, and that can cause even more tiredness. And also, then after that, if they eat, it can be harder to control their blood sugars because it's been so and so out of whack for a couple of hours or not under control.
And are there problems that come with that fluctuation between low and high that is that drastic of a change?
It can, because like I said, patients with diabetes don't have control over their blood sugars as we have. Like ours would be normal for the most part, but it can make it dangerous for them because if they don't eat as much food, their bodies can deteriorate or they would have low blood sugars, and it can be very dangerous.
For these meals, there's always a lot of dishes to choose from, usually so much if you take from everything, your plate's just heaping high. Are there certain parts of a meal that people with diabetes might want to avoid?
Sure. A lot of sugar probably is not the best food that they should eat because it can raise their blood sugars drastically. And then in the long run, too, the carbohydrates like potatoes, rice, bread, we would like for them to not necessarily avoid it, but in moderation, because those can increase the blood sugars long term.
Yeah, because there's a lot of foods there that are good, long-sustaining foods, but but those that do have a lot of sugars in it, you're already getting plenty of food, so it makes sense to avoid those.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations of how people with diabetes could really enjoy holiday meals in a safe way, like when they should exercise or when they should check their sugar, things like that?
Yeah, so preparation will help. Preparing their meals ahead of time, or maybe if they know that they're going to go to a party, maybe eat smaller meals ahead of time so they don't overeat when they are at the party. Or they could also ask, for example, they go to a family dinner or with friends, they can ask what will be served or look ahead of what foods are available in the restaurants. And then if they're going somewhere else, like with family again, they can ask if they can bring foods to share that they normally like to eat, so that they don't get the meals or foods that they don't usually that they're not supposed to eat, basically.
Yeah, a lot of times our eyes are bigger than our stomach, so it's important to be thinking about that and planning ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and though almost forgot. So for checking the blood sugars, for patients with diabetes, we normally have them check it before meals, like 15-30 minutes prior to meals, so they know what they're fasting, meaning without eating, what their blood sugars will be. And then if they know that they've eaten a lot during the day, I would recommend, or we would recommend checking it 2 hours after, because if it's over 300, that can be dangerous too. So checking after a good meal, and then going forward from that, maybe not eating as much if it's too high.
Don't get caught in those leftovers that are always there. Get pulled out again a couple hours right after the meal's over with.
Yeah, that's right. So also going out means staying out longer, because cutting back on sleep or loss of sleep can cause difficulty in controlling the blood sugars as well. So we would recommend aiming for 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night in order for your body to recuperate. Sleep deprivation can also make us do mindless eating, basically. Like we would just eat whatever we want to make us feel good, like high carbohydrates or high fats and sugary foods. So we would highly recommend to make sure that after they go to a party, to give themselves a couple of hours or a couple of a day or two to recuperate.
And it really sounds like for the people who are helping prepare the food and planning it, where there tends to be a lot of sleep lost because there's a lot of work that goes into it. If anyone who's preparing the party has diabetes, it's really important to get the sleep. Make sure you're eating while doing those preparations. Don't just wait for the big meal. And watch out for yourself too. It's not just about the guests that are coming.
Yeah. And one more thing with exercise. During holidays, it can be very stressful and busy. So we would recommend to break physical activities in small chunks. Like maybe, for example, if you go to a party, after talking with the people that, at the party, maybe taking a walk after holiday meal would help with better digestion as well. And then you would have exercise, a couple of minutes of exercise in the day.
Let's pause for just a moment to thank our sponsors.
Sometimes we don't notice how much our parents have aged until we come home for the holidays. All of a sudden, Mom is having trouble getting dressed and managing her medications. Perry Home Care, with its team of skilled nurses and therapists, can help keep your mom safe in her own home and get her health back on track. Talk to your mom about scheduling an evaluation with her primary care provider. Visit perrymemorial.org/homecare or call 815-875-4114 to learn more.
So even in addition to those holidays, we've got football season going on. People have parties for that. And then you end up eating more like snack foods that are out that certainly aren't necessarily the most healthy foods. Are there things that people with diabetes should really avoid with that, or some healthy alternatives they could eat?
Yeah. So I would recommend, because it's, like as you said, football season, and a lot of things are like the easier things to eat while they're watching. So try to avoid putting a lot of dips on the foods that they eat. I would also recommend eating nuts, which has more protein. It can make them feel full longer. And then cut up some vegetables like celery, carrots, or broccoli, which are healthier. They do have carbohydrates in it, but it's not as high as other, like potato chips or any candies or anything like that. And then smaller portion too would be better.
I'm sure there's some people listening to this who have not been diagnosed with diabetes, and maybe they're concerned that they might have it, or there might be a family risk that's associated. What are some of the signs and symptoms that you'd recommend they look out for in the holidays that would really let them know whether they need to get checked out more?
One of the symptoms that we tell our patients is excessive urinating. One of the things. I mean, there are other symptoms. There are other causes of that too, but that's one of the things: excessive urination, excessive hunger, and excessive thirst. In the long run, too, diabetes can cause weight loss, like drastic weight loss. I would recommend checking with their primary care provider or doctors to know more about it.
Now, can you talk a little bit about here at Perry what's offered I know in addition to you giving support, there's diabetes education. What else here that people could seek for help?
The first thing is to, see their primary care provider if it's here in Perry or elsewhere. And then the second one is the diabetes educator, Candice, is available. And then also there are monthly meetings that are held at the White Oak Classroom. I think it's every first Tuesday of the month. They would have meetings at 6 p.m. So they can check those out. They can ask the providers or ask someone from the hospital to know more about it.
Sure. And then those monthly meetings are listed on our website, on our event calendar. And then Candace has been on a previous episode, so I'll link to her podcast so anybody who wants to listen to her talk about diabetes and get a little bit more education about it. All right. So great information, great resources that'll be available online if you visit www.perrymemorial.org/podcast. Search for this episode. You can find all the information you need. And we hope that everybody has a healthy and fun holiday season. And thanks so much for joining us, Bianca.
Thank you, Dane.
It doesn't stop here. Access other podcast episodes and resources related to today's episode by visiting www.perrymemorial.org/podcast.